Laura Knight's Cassiopian experiments, often associated with the Cassiopeia material, involves the exploration of consciousness, spirituality, and the nature of reality. Through various methodologies, including channeling and psychic experiments, Knight and her collaborators sought to communicate with higher intelligences, particularly a group of entities referred to as the Cassiopeans. The primary aim was to gain insight into the metaphysical questions, the nature of existence, and human development. The experiments included multi-session discussions that cover topics like multidimensional realities, free will, and the influence of higher dimensional beings on humanity. Knight recorded these sessions, which often contained profound philosophical and esoteric insights, and these records became part of a larger body of work that aimed to explore consciousness beyond conventional scientific understanding. The overall tone of the experiments reflect a blend of skepticism and deep inquiry into the nature of consciousness and our place in the universe. Laura Knight began her communication with the Cassiopeans in 1994. She is still in communication with the Cassiopeans to this day. If you would like a better understanding of the Cassiopeans and their impact on humanity, I would highly suggest checking out the Wave series by Laura Knight, the Cassiopian Forum, which a link will be provided in the description box below, or purchasing the book that I personally am reading from that contains all of the transcripts and conversations between Laura and the Cassiopeans. The Cassiopeans base the soul's evolution and consciousness on the spiritual template known as the Law of One. The Law of One is also known as the raw material. It is a series of philosophical texts that emerged from a series of channeling sessions conducted by Carla Rucker, Don Elkins, and Jim McCarthy in the early 1980s. The sessions involved channeling a consciousness known as Ra, who claimed to be a collective of extraterrestrial beings from the sixth density. The key concepts in the Law of One are unity and oneness. The central tenet of the Law of One is that all beings are fundamentally interconnected and are expressions of the same universal consciousness. The phrase, "we are all one," encapsulates this idea, emphasizing that unity is the essence of existence. It also covers the densities of existence. The material describes the cosmos as composed of multiple densities or levels of existence. Each density represents a stage of spiritual evolution, with humans currently experiencing a third density, which is characterized by lessons in love, understanding, and most importantly, making choices. We also seek to understand in the Law of One soul evolution. According to Ra, souls undergo a process of evolution through these densities, learning and growing through various incarnations. The choice between these paths influences one's spiritual evolution and the experiences one encounters in life. There's also discussions of the role of free will. Free will is considered sacred, and individuals are encouraged to explore and make choices regarding their spiritual development without interference from higher beings. If you would like more information on the Law of One, please make sure to check out the material for yourself. A link to all resources will be posted down in the description box below. But for now, let's get on with the show. Pope John Paul I, born Albino Luciani on the 17th of October 1912, served as Pope for a very brief period in 1978. His papacy lasted only 33 days, making it one of the shortest in history. He was elected on August 26, 1978, following the death of Pope Paul VI, and he died unexpectedly on the 28th of September, 1978. John Paul I was known for his warmth, humility, and pastoral approach. He was the first pope to choose a double name, taking the names of two of his predecessors, John the 23rd and Paul the 6th, to symbolize continuity and renewal in the church. His papacy focused on themes of love, joy, and the importance of laity in the church. His sudden death led to various conspiracy theories and speculation, but the official cause was reported as a heart attack. After his death, he was succeeded by John Paul II, who would go on to have a much longer and more influential papacy. Pope John Paul I was beatified by Pope Francis on the 4th of September 2021, recognizing his life and contributions to the church. His legacy continues to be remembered for his gentle spirit and the brief but impactful time he spent as Pope. Pope John Paul I's sudden death on the 28th of September 1978, just 33 days after his election, has given rise to various conspiracy theories and speculation. Some of the most notable conspiracies include 1. Unaliving theories. Some conspiracy theorists have suggested that Pope John Paul I was unalived due to his intentions to reform the Vatican and address issues such as financial corruption within the church. His papacy was seen as a potential threat to certain entrenched interests, leading to speculation that he was ultimately silenced. 2. Vatican Bank Scandal. The Vatican Bank, particularly during the late 1970s, was embroiled in various financial scandals. Some theories propose that John Paul I was about to expose corruption or mismanagement within the bank, which could have led to powerful figures wanting him removed. 3. Opposition to certain policies. There are claims that John Paul I was planning to make significant changes to church policies, particularly regarding issues like contraception and the role of the laity. Some believe that these potential reforms could have met resistance from conservative factions within the church. 4. The mysterious circumstances of his death. The circumstances surrounding his death have fueled speculation. He was found dead in his bed, and there were reports that he had been in good health prior to his passing. The lack of an autopsy, which was not performed at the time, has also contributed to theories surrounding his death. 5. The role of Freemasonry. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that Freemasons within the Vatican may have been involved with his unaliving, as there were fears that he would oppose their influence in the church. 6. The Pope of the People. John Paul I was known for his pastoral approach and connections with ordinary Catholics. Some theorists argue that his popularity and the affection he garnered from the public made him a target for those who preferred a more traditional, less approachable papacy. While these theories have circulated widely, there is no credible evidence to support them. The official cause of death was reported as a heart attack, and many historians and scholars view the conspiracy theories as speculation rather than based on factual evidence. Nonetheless, the intrigue surrounding his brief papacy and untimely death continues to capture the imagination of many. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. I did a little introduction into Pope John Paul I because we're going to be talking about him today, and I was not familiar with him when I read this reading prior to presenting it to you, but I thought it was fascinating because it opens up a whole different level of discussion. Now, for me, I think sometimes people have a hard time. A lot of times people get stuck in like black and white thinking, right? Like you're either good or you're bad. And they don't realize that for people, human beings, and for situations, there's often a lot of nuance, especially I think when we're talking about something like the Pope. Now, I am not a fan of the Pope at all. I've never been a fan of the Pope. If you've been on this channel for a while with me, you know that any type of religion, especially religion that has like a head, like the Pope is supposed to be the dude that talks to God, or like somebody's like the prophet, like any type of religion that has that pecking order is automatically negative polarity. So automatically you're looking at satanic faith, because according to the law of one, the positive side, everybody is equal. Like no one is better than anyone else. Some of us might have different talents, but it doesn't make their life more valuable than anybody else's life. We all work together in this social memory complex versus having elitism or a pecking order. So that goes for like any type of monarchy. You know, if we're looking at an actual republic or a democracy where the people are electing or deciding who's going to lead them, and it changes every 4 years or so, then that is something that would be more positively oriented, because the people collectively are involved in making those decisions. But if you have like a monarchy, any type of bloodline type of situation where somebody is more valuable because of their birth status, or in, you know, the Pope's case was elected to be like the mouthpiece of God, that's all satanic. That's all satanic. Now, with that being said, there are people born into these institutions, into these organizations, or exist within these organizations that are good people, that are positively oriented people. However, when it comes to the Pope, and you guys know, if you've been with me for a very long time, you know that I believe in all the weird and wacky stuff. I believe in all of it, but I'm also pretty grounded. And I think that has a lot to do, with my yoga training for 19 years. Also, I take to heart like empathy and how it would feel, because I know how it feels, right? To have fake conspiracies made up about you. Like I know how that feels. And because I know how that feels, I never want to feed that flame. Like I never want to be a part of making somebody else's life miserable. I never want to be a part of contributing to like cruelty. Right. And we see that a lot in the truther or disclosure world. We see a lot of cruelty. I think a lot of people take their insecurities, especially women. I hate to say it, but it does seem like it's more women that maybe were like made fun of in high school or always felt like a wallflower. And they'll take that anger and that hurt, and from when they were abused, they become the abusers, and they start to create fake stories and lies and hearsay about somebody else that they see they're intimidated by. I think that's why we see a lot of people in the truther community are really sold to this idea that every famous woman is not really a woman, which we know some of them aren't, but not all of them. And so I just see that as being very, very cruel. And that's one thing that I don't want to be. I want to be, even though I'm a tough love type of person, I'm very tough love, I also want to be kind and to really consider fairness when it comes to a human being and when it comes to a human life. Even with, there's some actors, some artists that I really, really love. I don't like their politics, but I really like them as artists. And so I try to be very fair and understanding that we're all nuanced. Like all of us have complexities, and we all have certain opinions that are bound to change. It's the point of an opinion, right? Like 20 years ago, I'm not the same person that I was 20 years ago. Thank God. Like if you are the same person you were 20 years ago, then there's some problems there. Yeah. There's no evolution, inner growth, inner self-reflection, inner work happening. With all of that being said, though, when it comes to Pope John Paul I, now, again, I don't know anything about John Paul I, except for the tiny bit of research I did into him for this reading. There are a lot of different factions of people, of conspiracy theorists, who have all these different stories about why this Pope only served in the papacy for 33 days. Now, do I believe that his passing was weird? Yes, I do think that there's some truth to these conspiracies about his passing. However, when I talk about black and white thinking, with that being said, I don't think that Pope John Paul I was a good guy, nor do I think the person or the group that unalived him are good guys. I think they're both bad guys. And I think that's one thing that the truther or the disclosure community, the seeker community, has a hard time understanding sometimes. When we're looking at the establishment, the controllers of the world, which obviously the Catholic Church is right at the top of that, as in all Christian churches really, and all religions really, we're looking at different factions. So there are different factions within the Black Hats, we'll say. They're different factions that are going to fight each other. Yeah. Now, the reason why my speculation, again, I don't know much about Pope John Paul I at all. He left this earth before I was even on this earth. And I did not grow up Catholic. I grew up Presbyterian. I grew up in a family that really did not like Catholics. And that's so funny because my sister's actually married to a Catholic now. But I grew up as a kid being told that Catholicism is completely wrong. That and the Pope, like the issue of the Pope is literally one of the main issues that sparked the Protestant Reformation. Because all of a sudden people started figuring it out that there is no elitism when it comes to God. Now, again, that gets into a different conversation because we know the God of the Bible is Lucifer. So there's still even more confusion there. But nonetheless, people started to go like, wait a minute, why am I being subservient to this Pope when God loves us all equally? Why do I have to go talk to a priest when I can talk to God myself? Like the idea of a Pope and a priest and cardinals and bishops, that all kind of slaps the teachings of Yahshua across the face. Like the teachings of Yahshua were really like, you can do this yourself. In fact, only you can do this yourself. No one can do it for you. And so that spawned the Protestant Reformation, which was a huge turning point in human history. This also spawned the Protestant Reformation, obviously had a domino effect. All in all, I do think the Protestant Reformation was necessary to get us where we are today, because with the Protestant Reformation came capitalism. Came this questioning of a monarch. Well, if the Pope isn't legit, then is the monarch legit? So we had these new ideas forming. People were starting to take, not only just take accountability for their own lives, but actively trying to push back against the matrix, which is what we're doing now in this timeline too. Yeah, this is what spawned America. This is what spawned the Constitution, that every single person is born with certain inalienable rights given to them by their creator. So the Pope did not give you these rights. Your government did not give you these rights. God gave you these rights to be a human being, to live, to breathe, to have communion with God. And so with that being said, I am very, very hard on the Pope. I'm very hard on the Dalai Lama, on any type of religion that places somebody, one human fucking being, that's superior to all the other ones. You can talk to God yourself. You don't need a Pope or another human being to translate that for you. Any religion that has prophets is a negatively polarized religion, because we're all, sometimes when people get prophecies, it's actually just for them. It's not for anybody else. And if we understood that, if we understood that reality, then I think these organized religions would not have as much power. So even though there are good people in the church, even though they're all good people in a negatively polarized faith, I believe, in my opinion, that in order to get to that point of being able to be the Pope, you've done some pretty dastardly things. I don't think that this guy, Pope John I, would have even been eligible to be a cardinal, even if he didn't do some things to get to that position. That is my perspective. Okay. And so when we look at his unaliving, we look at why he was unalived. I don't think it has anything to do, and I read at the beginning, we had the biggest theories out there. I opened with that. I don't think we're looking at good versus evil in this situation. I think we're looking at evil versus evil. And that's just my take on it. Now, there are a lot of great, I tried to listen to some documentaries and podcasts about Pope John Paul I, just so I had a better understanding of the intricacies of the Catholic Church. Honestly, I think I understand the Mormon Church better than the Catholic Church at this point, which is funny because I grew up Presbyterian, but I spent more time studying. Mormonism really fascinates me. It's totally polarized negative. I mean, the Cassiopeians have already told us that Joseph Smith was talking to a Lizzie, not God. It's totally, but I find it more fascinating because within Mormonism, it's more blatantly obvious than maybe in Catholicism is an older faith, right? It's an older faith. But I don't think necessarily that the Pope is like the Antichrist himself, but I think he's part of that system. Yeah. Now there is, I think it's Tyler Marshall. There's another YouTuber out here, Truther. And I like him, but I have a hard time watching his stuff. Hold on, let me see if I can find him for you guys. All right, here it is. So I think I'm subscribed to his channel. Dr. Taylor Marshall, he did a big, almost 2-hour episode over this. I have not watched it, and I don't think that Dr. Taylor Marshall is control. I don't think he's one of the truthers who's controlled opposition. I honestly, I don't. I just think he's very misguided. He's right about a lot of his research into the corruption in the world, I agree with, except when it comes to religion. He's very much, in my opinion, very cognitive dissonance when it comes to religion. And for whatever reason, even though he can see all this corruption all over the world, he has a really hard time understanding that Catholicism as a whole, doesn't matter who the Pope is, as a whole, is satanic. I mean, look, this priest is wearing a black. I mean, the pastors and priests in Protestantism also sometimes wear black robes, and that's very simple. That comes from the Saturnalian Brotherhood, the fraternity of Satan. I've done a show on that before. I don't know if that show stayed on YouTube. That might have been one of the videos that YouTube actually took down, but it might be over my Rumble channel. And so the whole thing is just dirty. And it's not just Catholicism, it's all the Christian faiths, all of them, right? They're dirty. They're dirty. They're not the teachings of the real God. You know, does the Pope talk to God? Sure. But have you bothered to ask which God? Who is their God? I will tag below. I've done some deep dives into the Schmejuits. I'm not going to say the full name. I'll tag those down below where it gets into like the breaking down of like necromancy with the saints, which is a huge part of Catholicism, is necromancy. If you don't know what that is, it's basically witchcraft involving unalived people. And so there's just a lot. So I haven't watched Dr. Taylor Marshall's video. I don't want to, because I know that it's not going to be accurate, because it's going to be there's going to be such confirmation bias, and there's going to be so much cognitive dissonance when it comes to their look at this unaliving, my opinion, Pope John Paul I, when he passed away, that I don't think it's going to be accurate information, because they're so, like, Dr. Taylor Marshall is just so programmed, like so programmed. And that's what I keep saying, right? Like, the establishment is laughing at us because we have figured everything out. We figured out politics. We figured out health. We figured out our school system. We figured out our history is inaccurate, but people still, for some really weird reason, can't quite get it in their head that the establishment is also puppeting the religions. And I mean like all of it. Like, there's not one part of the Christian faith now that is the original teachings of Yahshua, down to the name change, down to the fact that Yahshua was never crucified. Yeah. So it all needs to be restructured. And one thing my boyfriend points out a lot is, like, I would say out of all the faiths, the one that is probably the most accurate is probably Hinduism. And the reason why I say that is because with Hinduism, it's not as hands-on as like any other religion. You have, in the Hindu faith, there's usually a room in your house where you do your own puja, is what they call it, worship. So you're not being dominated by a priest. They do have priests in Hindu temples, but you're not being dominated. There's more autonomy within Hinduism than there is in other. And that's because in Hinduism, one of the tenets is reincarnation, which actually Yahshua spoke about reincarnation too. So there you go. And so there's not a lot of fear when you know you're going to be able to be given more chances. There's not a whole lot of fear-based propaganda or fear-based vulnerability or fear-based manipulation. And my boyfriend brings up a lot, like with Christianity, with this new, you know, when Constantine, going back to Constantine the Great, which that guy was a total, you know, build back better communist. Let's just be real. That's what Constantine was. It became structured to the point, because, you know, the Europe was the first place to be colonized. Europeans, for most of European history, they were pagans. And then they were tortured. And so they submitted to this new faith, right? And that's what it kind of did start to dominate. Yeah. It was either kill or be killed at that point. And before this, people, and even Europeans, had more of a private relationship with the divine. They would do their own home worshiping. And one thing that the Christian church did was take that away from people, make them have to go to a location to do their worshiping, to take that power away from them. Now, we also know it goes deeper than that, because Christianity is Mithraism. It just is. It's Mithraism. And so a lot of these old Christian churches, especially in Europe, you can see there's lots of information out there about this. If this is triggering you, please just do your own research. There were underground temples underneath the main cathedral, the main sanctuary, while the people were doing their singing and praying. Beneath, the elites would be doing human and you know. So, and I know that's a hard pill to swallow because so many people self-identify with their religion, which is really sad because religion is a belief system, and belief systems die with the body because it's coming from the brain, not the heart. And we know from the Cassiopians, I've done plenty of episodes on soul smashing or what selling your soul looks like. And according to the Cassiopians, selling your soul is when you believe a lie and you self-identify with a lie. And so make a long story short, with Dr. Taylor Marshall, I respect a lot of his work. I do not think he is control opposition. I think he's just wildly misguided. And I think while he does research into other subjects, he has not yet even started to really objectively look at Christianity. And I think for a lot of people, because they've been so indoctrinated into faith, and this goes beyond Christianity too, I think that they confuse God with religion. God and religion are not mutually exclusive. And in a lot of ways, I don't think God and religion are the same thing anyway. I think God is, I left religion to find God, right? I've always been very open-minded anyway, but I never, there was always friction. You can't tell me that God has unconditional love for somebody, but then put conditions on that love. That is bonkers. And that never sat right with me. You can't traumatize children by telling them that God loves them unconditionally, but then he horrifically crucifies his own son. That's trauma. That's abuse to tell a child that, because then the child is now not going to have a full understanding of love, even on a subconscious level, not a conscious level, but that subconscious level. That you're telling me that God loves me so much, but then he did that to his son. So then the child's trust subconsciously is shattered. And that I think is why we have so many issues, is because from a very young age, we are told one story, but in the action shown another. And so I've said it before for myself, if I had a child, there's no way in hell my child would set foot in church. I'm just sorry, I just wouldn't do it, because I would want my child to have a healthy relationship with God. I wouldn't want to be responsible for traumatizing my child or setting my child up to believe false information, believe a lie, and therefore lose a part of themselves, who they authentically are, because they're trying to fit in some mold to meet the conditions of a God that's supposed to love them unconditionally. So with that being said, I think people like Dr. Taylor Marshall, and even the people who send me unaliving threats from the Christian world, I think they've been so abused mentally by religion that the idea, it's like Stockholm syndrome, right? The idea of even starting to question that is just beyond them. That is just not a possibility. And I do have to say, even though I have a lot of issues with the way my parents raised me, I will say I'm very grateful that even though I grew up in a Christian home, my parents were not as nasty as some Christians are. They were very kind of open, right? And yeah, so I just wanted to set that up. So if you want to watch Dr. Taylor Marshall's conversation, go ahead. Again, I'm not going to, because to me it feels like it's just gonna be a waste of time. And it's probably just going to drive me crazy, because I'm going to see the lies, and so I just hope that Dr. Taylor Marshall, because he sounds like a really great guy, and we agree, he and I agree politically, and I thank him for supporting the same political beliefs and for being a big voice out there to help get the right person where they need to be and all that kind of stuff. But I do hope that he does wake up out of the spell casting that the church has obviously done on him. And so if you watch that, you're probably going to see, I haven't seen it, but I would speculate that you're going to see them try to defend Pope John Paul I, maybe he was going to be the good Pope that changes everything. And my perspective is no. Was there suspicions around his passing? Abso-fucking-lutely. Do I believe the conspiracies that somebody had a hand? Abso-fucking-lutely I do. But does that mean that Pope John Paul I was good? No. Does it mean that the person that took him out was good? No. These are two factions fighting against themselves. I hope that makes sense. I know that was long-winded. I am very loquacious. I'm an Aquarius and I'm Vata. My dosha is Vata, so there we go. So now we're going to look at this, and I'm doing this specifically because we do have Easter coming up. So I thought this would be fun to do. Which, if you guys know, most of you know, most people on my channel know Easter's got fuck all to do with Jesus, right? Like Easter is about Tammuz and Ishtar. Tammuz was a 40-year-old. He was unalived by a boar, a wild hog. At 40 years old, he went down into the underworld. Ishtar went down after him to retrieve him, and that's when he came back was the resurrection. That's why people get the T on their head at Lent. That's not the cross. Again, Yahshua was never crucified. This is the mark of Tammuz and the 40 days of Lent where you give something up. That signifies the time Tammuz spent in the underworld and the age he was when he was unalived by the wild hog. That's why people eat ham at Easter, and why the rebirth of the eggs and the bunnies, that all goes back to Ishtar, his woman. So, but anyway, I thought since the Christian church has tried to capitalize on a story and a celebration that's not theirs, I thought it would be interesting to do these readings leading up to this week. And there's lots of stuff on the Pope, guys, so we're going to be doing even more Pope stuff in the future. But this is fascinating. It's the 17th of June, 1995. Now, I do quite like the earlier readings because they're still learning and there's not as many people. And so it's fascinating. But I do like the current ones too, because it gives us more of an indication about what's to come. Okay, so direct channeling. Frank is direct channeling Laura SV, Terry, and Jan. Laura inducts Frank into hypnosis. Question, Laura. When the connection is completed, please indicate by saying, I am ready. Pause. Are you ready? Answer, yes. Question, Laura. Okay, we do have questions, and I think Terry will set us off this evening. How did FDR die? So Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of our presidents, due to cerebral hemorrhages. It was a natural passing then? Yes, all passing is natural. It was not a passing contrived by someone else. We don't understand the reference. He wasn't schmurdered. You guys know I have to watch my words. Schmurdered in some way. No. So yeah, that was his time. That's funny. All passing is natural. Regardless of whether somebody does it to you or your body just leaves, it's all natural, right? What about Pope John Paul I, the Pope who served for 1 month? Please speak as loudly and clearly as possible. Answer. It is the comfort of the subject being used as a channel or conduit that is the most important factor in clear speaking and increase of volume. This can be a more useful method of channeling information if all circumstances are optimal levels. What else can we do for comfort? Placement of object to the right of the subject's head is somewhat inhibiting flow of energy. Please place some form of sustaining object or brace to the left of the subject's head. You know what's funny? I was just thinking as I was reading this, people get all upset that I'm going through, like all the Christians get upset that I'm going through these channelings, but yet the Catholics believe the Pope is literally channeling God. Like, what's the difference? Like both the good and the bad use channeling. Both the dark, we use the same tools, but for different purposes. If that makes sense. And if you're not comfortable with this, then don't watch it. You don't have to watch it. Question, adjustments made. SV, is that better? J, I recommend you get him settled before he even goes into trance. Laura, I would, but he is so hard-headed, he won't listen to my suggestions. He says, I'm fine, but then he isn't. Back to the question, what caused the death of Pope John Paul I? Answer, unfortunately, has been indicated by us. Sometimes you ask questions that we will not be able to answer for you, not because the answers are unknown, but rather because knowing the answers could prove harmful to you. Question, Terry. Well, that is an answer in itself. He did not leave naturally. Answer, speculation is harmless when compared to irrefutable, confirmed knowledge. Laura, question. Now, this goes back This was, again, 1995. And I believe what they're saying is he was unalived, but we're not going to give you all of the information because it could be harmful to you. So could this be that they're saying that just because he was unalived does not mean that he's a good guy? And does not mean that the people who unalived him are good guys? That this is a dog-eat-dog situation? Although dogs are always good guys. They're always the good guys. Okay. Susan had a question we discussed earlier this week as to what is taking place when craft that are described as belonging to aliens begin to strobe as opposed to pulsating or merely blinking or other configurations. In other words, what are the different configurations of light emanations and what do they indicate? It's interesting when you pose multiple questions, please choose one, which we see this all the time. They don't like it when you ask multiple questions. They want one at a time. Is there something indicated by a UFO as to its condition or status or proposed activity when it changes its light emanation? That's a confusing thought pattern. Okay, say a specific UFO is seen. When it is first seen, it appears metallic. In a bit, it begins to glow with light or some other color. Then after a few minutes of glowing, it begins to strobe, flashing a very bright light. What could this indicate? We do not mean to be difficult, but the term strobe is still not completely clear to us. That seems to be an artificial construction of your plane that we are not familiar with. Well, just moving from glowing to a blinding flashing. Well, you must be aware, first of all, as we have told you before, as you have, in fact, gained knowledge from other sources prior to your communication with us, the entire subject referred to as UFOs is extremely varied and multifaceted in nature and does not represent any one condition, entity, source of entities, mode of transport, density level, or anything else related to these. Laura, so in other words, we would have to specify a specific sighting and condition in order to obtain an answer to this particular question or type of question. Answer. Well, let us ask you, would that not be the wisest course of action? Question Jan. I think I have a way out of it. Possibly we're referring to the type of sightings that are typical in the Gulf Breeze area where they answer. Be aware of the fact, please, that the whole Gulf Breeze situation is rather interesting in many ways. And when we say rather interesting, we are being subjective, viewing the subjective from your point of view. There is more going on here than meets the eye, again, from your point of view, not from our point of view, for we know what's going on there. And this brings us to another point that should be taken at this point, no pun intended. That is that your line of questioning in this particular session does seem to be developing a pattern. That being trying to find answers to mysteries which, if found, could cause difficulties for you. Example 1 being Pope John Paul's death, as you call it, and example 2, Gulf Breeze. If you were to know the answers to these questions, we can assure you that it would not be long as you measure in time before ramifications would result that would not be pleasant for you. This is because all entities concerned with these various subject matters are strictly service to self, and in fact involved in practices that, if revealed in their entirety, would be damaging to the efforts of those seeking to serve self in the ways that they are seeking to serve self. So it is not possible for us to go into any great detail about light seen at Gulf Breeze, or would be as it would be possible for you to infer from the information given, various bits and pieces of information which could lead you to knowledge that it would be best that you not possess currently. Do you understand? And I feel better doing this in 2025, 30 years ago? This was done, 1995. That's basically, I think, what I was saying. This is because all entities concerned with these various subject matters are strictly service to self. Boom. That's the negative polarity. So Pope John Paul was service to self. Just because he was taken out by someone else does not mean that he was a good guy. These are two factions, service to self, demonic factions fighting each other for power in their black robes, their fraternity of Satan robes. We have to get rid of this black and white thinking. Good guys and bad guys are not the only two things that are fighting each other right now. It's the good guys and the bad guys and all their factions. Question, Terry, are you suggesting that sometime in the future that it might be possible and helpful for us to know these things? Answer, well, we sincerely try not to suggest, but rather communicate. And the communication intent was to indicate that it would be more beneficial perhaps to gain awareness of these subjects in detail in what you describe as your future than would be the case in what you describe as your present. So the Cassiopians are saying, you need to study the establishment. You need to understand what service to self is. You need to understand what the Illumishmati is. You need to understand what the deep state is. We cannot just tell you answers to these questions, because if we tell you that Pope John Paul I was murdered, then you are naturally going to think he must have been doing something right. But if you study service to self and how they behave, you would know that anybody that gets to that level of popedom had to do certain things to even get there. So you would be misled. You would be believing a lie. And so they're saying it's important for you to do your research on what is actually happening in the world before we start answering these questions, so that the answers to these questions don't lead you down the wrong road. Does that make sense? Knowledge is power, knowledge protects, and knowledge is infinite. If you don't know what service to self is, I implore you to read the Law of One. It's the best template for this time. If you understand the Law of One, you have a lesser chance of being duped. Right? Because I know the Law of One, I know that none of these bad guys in the world have capitulated. That doesn't happen for service to self. They don't capitulate. That's not in their moral compass. To capitulate, to surrender, is a service to others action. They're trying to go service to self. So they're not going to do that. The only time they will ever capitulate is if it serves them. So all these truthers out there telling you all these bad guys, don't worry, it's just a show. They've all been taken in. It's all good. That's bullshit. And that's controlled opposition, to get you to relax in your laurels so that NWO, New World Order, can walk right in through the front door without any type of resistance from us. All right. Question, Joe. So sometimes knowledge is, Terry interjects both comments, lost. Knowledge without understanding, incorrect. Knowledge protects, but there is an old saying in your third density world. I know what's coming. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. I think if that doesn't sum up the truther community, then I don't know what does. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Got it. And we will add a little bit of knowledge is no knowledge at all. Understood? Question, Laura. Yes. Jan. Is this kind of like along the lines of knowledge out of context is dangerous? That would be accurate as well. Question, Laura. Well, since we are not going to go anywhere with that question, I have another one. A couple of nights ago, I did a session with my son to examine the events that took place on August 16th, 1993 over my pool, wherein a couple of UFO-type objects were seen by all of us, kind of casually drifting by. In this hypnosis session, after 2 or 3 passes through the subject, he indicated that, in fact, that was not merely a sighting of something going overhead, but actually an abduction situation. Would that be correct? What do you think? I knowing what I know now, I think so. The reason why we ask this is, again, we must reiterate, your learning is to be more and more accomplished by utilizing the tools you have within you. And we are happy to see that you are indeed doing this, but you must trust in your own ability to access the information you need through your own efforts. Question, Laura. One remark he made during session, and this startled me a little, and I would like to get a little amplified on the subject, was that towards the end, when I asked what was happening, he said that he was taken apart and beamed back down without the benefit of a pain suppressor. This meant that when he was demolecularized, some sort of device that is used to suppress the pain was not used, and the process of atomic demolecularization or remolecularization can actually be painful and can cause distress. Is this correct? Possibly. The whole process of abduction can be stressful, but to varying degrees. And of course, we must remind you that, as with everything else, it is your own perception of reality that is the most important factor, not some notion of your own perception of reality. Question, Laura, I don't understand what you mean. Is there some device that does it hurt to be taken to pieces molecularly, beamed aboard a spaceship, and then sit back down? Jan, can this be painful to the body? Answer, well, first of all, you are getting way ahead of yourself. Do you honestly believe that a beam of light came down and took you to pieces and moved your body physically on a space vehicle, did some form of examination or some such thing, and then reassembled your entire body without a pain suppressor? Is that what you believe? Question, Laura, well, he didn't say it happened to me. He said it happened to him. Jan, we have never heard the term pain suppressor before. Laura, yes, we have never heard anything about anything like this, and I do believe a beam of light could come down and disassemble us and reassemble us, and then something was done to me. Well, from what I have studied, I would say it's possible. I mean, knowing about the time manipulation capabilities of said entities, it is entirely possible that it could have happened without my awareness of any loss of time whatsoever. Answer, yes, this is true. However, we have told you in a previous session in detail the methodology that is used for what you refer to as abduction. And if you are familiar with the transcripts that you have now created, you know precisely how this is done. Your description is not completely correct as referenced in the hypnosis session you speak of, or at least your interpretations of the information given during the hypnosis session given is not correct. Now, it must be noted here that when we make such clarifying statements, such as this is not correct or that is not correct, it is useful for us to do this because the nature of your state of being and all others is one involving various degrees of bonded illusions. Therefore, any and all possibilities are present in most instances. However, when two or more of these bonds of the illusion are misaligned, then indeed absolute correctness or absolute incorrectness is possible. In this case, there is a misalignment of bonding. Therefore, it is in fact completely incorrect. And furthermore, to explain exactly the process again, even though we do very much desire for you to learn, and we sense that perhaps you are getting ahead of yourself in the learning curve, as it were, which is somewhat distressing, but we will worry about that later. The main thing is that you have been told how this process takes place. We will now repeat it. Please do try to retain this information, as it is very important not only for what perhaps has happened in your reality, as you would refer to it as your past, but also is a possible variation of your present in what you refer to as your future. These experiences must be known in their entirety as to what they really are. You are not normally removed as a physical third density being from one location to another. What happens is very simple. The time frame is normally frozen, and we use the term frozen for a lack of a better term. What this means is that your perception of time in your physical locator, third density body, cease to pass during this period of time that is called zero time, variously by members of your human race. What happens is that the soul imprint occupying or of that particular host body is removed forcibly, transported to another locator, and remoleculized as a separate physical entity body for purposes of examination, implantations, and other. Then it is demoleculized. The soul imprint is used for the purpose of duplicating process. It is then demolecularized and the soul imprint is replaced in the original body at the original locator. This is the process that takes place, which is so fascinating, guys. You understand what they're saying? So when you are abducted, your physical body is not moved. They pull the energetic soul out of you and make that turn into a physical form in their density, which is possible because remember, they are in a different density. And that is what is abducted, not the physical body. Okay? Now, this is, we've seen them say before, they're not going to abduct like an organic portal. So they have no use to abduct human beings that don't have souls. They only can use human beings who do have souls. Now, as they have stated over and over and over again, You're never abducted by the good guys. It's always the dark densities that abduct you, okay? On occasion, the fourth density being doing the abduction can actually make a mistake in time referencing points of third density illusion. This may create the effect of the appearance of an alternate or duplicate experience. That makes sense. When in actuality, there has been only one experience. This is what happened in your case. As you perceive the passenger of two ships, for lack of a better term, when in actuality, there was only one. This is because the time frame reference illusion was not completely matched from beginning of event to the end of the event in zero time. Normally, however, this is not a problem. So it's like, that's like deja vu, right? Like they didn't quite get because they're working, our time for any fourth density being good or bad is very weird for them. We do time differently. So they have to try to pause, freeze your time, pull you out and then put you back in. And sometimes there's like a lapse. And so you have this like double imprint memory. On rare occasion, the host or the subject of the abduction can actually find themselves replaced in the time frame illusion in what could appear to be several hours, days, weeks, or even sadly years prior to the beginning of the event, which of course could cause side effects such as total insanity and other such things. Fortunately, that did not occur in your case, but there are some fracturing of time frame referenced illusions. This is why you thought you saw two ships when in actuality you only saw one. Now, it is most important that you understand that this is not physical third density experience in this entirety. There is a soul imprint that all first density, second density, third density, and fourth density beings possess, as you already know, that is extracted. From that soul imprint, a duplicate copy or cloning, if you will, which appears on fourth density, can then be made and studied, and the soul imprint is then replaced into the original body at whatever density it was taken. This is normally how the process is done. Very scary. Most often, if the third density being is removed in total physicality, there is no return of that being to third density. They are permanently removed to fourth density. Most often, that is what takes place, although on rare occasion, there can be a return. However, there is no need for this as a computer duplication for all purposes of examination, alteration of synapse, and implanting need not be done on third density, can be done completely in the fourth density duplication process. Do you understand? And that is because, my friends, for those who are new here, your consciousness creates your body, not the other way around. So if something is tweaked in your soul, like a implant, that will then physically manifest in your body because your consciousness is what creates the reality of experience. And I guess I'll take time to do a short, we'll pause that there. That's a really good place to bring in my yoga studies, my 19 years of yoga studies with Prakriti Purusha Shakti, the Shiva the Shakti. And so hold on for 1 second from a word from our sponsors. This episode today is sponsored by the Esoteric Academy, which is a virtual online mystery school. If you're looking for a place to explore your spirituality, to explore the ancient scriptures and text from the East, and learn how to apply these lessons to your modern day life, then the Esoteric Academy is the place for you. For only $25 a month, you have unlimited access to a library full of workout videos that incorporate ancient spiritual techniques into modern day movement. These workout videos not only give you a healthy body, but they also help you activate your chakra, understand your energy values, and become more grounded in your body. If you're looking for more than just the exercises, for $40 a month, you get unlimited access to all the exercise videos and access to many courses over the Bhagavad Gita, courses over the Yoga Sutras, courses over all the deep philosophy found in the Vedic text, as well as a deeper look at the Law of One and the Cassiopians. The Esoteric Academy also offers multiple meditations as well as a look at quantum healing. Each month you also get a live class with a master teacher on top of a live phone call and conversation with myself and other master teachers. Once you sign up for the Esoteric Academy, you do also get 7 days of a free trial to make sure that this platform is right for you. For more information on the Esoteric Academy, there is a link down in the description box below. So you guys, if you want more information on how all this process works, again, please join us over on the Esoteric Academy, where we do deeper courses into this idea of body and spirit, the mind-body-spirit complex, all that kind of stuff. Question, Terry, how does the implant come back to the third density body that's originally still here? Answer, the process we're describing, which involves the remolecularization, is very complex to try and describe how fourth density is translated into third density, except that once the duplication, the fourth density cloning, or duplicate is present, all fourth density realities surrounding that fourth density duplicate will be matched in third density, whatever and wherever desired, because in effect, it is the entire density level which is being exchanged, not just the object contained within. So this is how like black magic works too. Does that make sense to you guys? Like that is how this works. The quantum, some people call it the quantum. Yeah. So sometimes for me, I get really frustrated because I've been the target of a lot of black magic. And for me, I get really mad when people are like, oh, just think positive thoughts. That's toxic positivity. What works for me and what they tell you to do is to study this, to understand how it works. I talked about the Magical Child Shop over on TikTok and about the witch wars of the 1970s. And somebody talked about someone they knew that had been hunted by a coven. I've been hunted by a coven for 4 years now. And the only thing that has worked to help me is to actually study this stuff, to understand how they do what they do, how they do black magic, to know how that's done. So that when I know that how that's done, it's like the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain. Once you see the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, all of a sudden the wizard isn't scary anymore, right? I see you. I know what you're doing. And knowledge is power, knowledge protects. And according to the Cassiopeians, the more you know, the more protected you are. And working on yourself and all that good stuff. Laura, so in other words, just as the soul imprint, then it goes into fourth density, can be used as a template to create a carbon copy, so to speak. Then anything that is done to that carbon copy then becomes a template that recreates the same manifestation when it is sent back to third. Precisely. With the only variance being that technology is used to make sure that implants, have I been saying imprints? Oh no, imprints and implants. Okay, precisely, with the only variance there being that technology is used to make sure that implants or added material that comes from fourth density is such that it will also translate equally into third density through the remolecularization process. Again, because the remolecularization process is more coming from the consciousness than anything else. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Consciousness came before matter. Spirit came before matter. Soul came before matter. Question, Laura, is there any method that we could or should know about to remove or deactivate implants? Answer, no, you're not capable of doing that without causing death of the host. And by the way, please don't believe those who claim that they can do such things as they cannot. This is so important for all the scammers out there. Once you have an implant, it cannot be removed. Doesn't mean that that implant's going to continue to have power over you, but it cannot be removed. So don't be giving your money to people who say they can remove implants. That's a scam. Question, Laura. So in this particular case, something was done, something occurred here, which affected me. My subsequent physical condition makes me curious as to whether the physical reactions I had for 6 to 9 months and still have occasionally following this event were a third density reaction to the what you call fracturing of time. Was this an aberration or was this intentional? My, you take one subject and launch forward into another. You create your own reality, Laura. That really is impressive, but of course incorrect. Sorry to say, it does not occur as a result of the fracturing of time frame reference illusions. It occurs as a result simply and merely of your psychic impressions imprint on the experience itself, reflecting back into your third density physical reality. As we have told you before, of course, and we don't mean to sound snide or condescending, however, we are just a bit perturbed that you do not seem to be keeping up with your own transcripts. Question, Laura. Well, since that question was never answered, it was never answered incorrectly in that way. However, if you are familiar with the transcripts, you would realize that this was answered. Laura, well, it gave me food for thought hearing about time fracturing. Terry, Is the pain that Laura's son described not from what he said it was, but rather the pain that was related when the fourth density being removes the life force? Life force is never removed. The soul is extracted. In answer to your question, Laura's son is merely expressing the discomfort and distress that most third and second density beings experience when abducted by fourth density service to self entities. Why did they abduct Jason and myself? Why did they only abduct Jason and myself and not the girls? Did they? Well, that is what he said, and you have said that the girls have never been abducted. Well, I guess that answers the question then. Well, why? Why only him and me? Why not? Jan, just random? Laura, was it a random abduction? As we have said before, you have been making progress and learning through your own resources, but we would hate to see you fall back. Question, Laura. Well, I don't want to fall back, and I have no intention of not pursuing this matter through my own resources. But using myself as a case in point, I am trying to find out a little bit about the nature of the abduction process in general. I mean, is it done randomly, or is it done to specific persons for specific reason? My thought is that maybe specific people are targeted to put them out of commission, but then that seems a little egotistical, and I don't want to stumble over my ego and say that I'm being abducted to put me out of commission and somebody else is being abducted randomly. Answer. Well, I hope this following statement will not disturb you. Any service to self-being who possesses a greater power than you do will not have any extreme difficulty in putting you out of commission if they so desire. This has happened, of course. So let's reread that again. That's important. Well, I hope this following statement will not disturb you. Any service to self-being who possesses a greater power than you do will not have any extreme difficulty in putting you out of commission if they so desire. This has happened, of course. Question, Laura. I would like to ask a little bit about synchronicity. I would like to know, what is the source of synchronous events? Is it a multiple sources, or is it something that comes out of the percipient's own mind, or, Jan, is it random? Answer. Imagine a young school child walking along the street, standing beside a rose bush, picking one of the flowers and asking the flower, would you please explain Einstein's theory of relativity to me today? Now, the analogy here is, while humorous, perhaps it also to point out to you that we admire and appreciate the challenges that you bring to us to answer such complex questions in such simple forms, not to mention such simple format. However, if we were to answer these accurately and adequately for you when you ask such complicated questions, it will require a session lasting approximately 24 of your days nonstop. Needless to say that this would render the subject rather useless, and of course yourselves as well. So we aren't simply not able to answer a question as complex as what is synchronicity, as it is incredibly complex. It involves aspects in every imaginable state of reality merging together in what could best be described, if you see visually, a massive mosaic in perfect balance. But that is not adequate to a response of your question. However, hopefully, maybe you can contemplate the visual image presented and help yourself to learn more complex answers. And guys, remember, third density is not the density of knowing. That's fifth density. Question, Terry. Several sessions back, when we were discussing perpendicular realities, you were talking about something that happened to me and that I had to look back over my life and analyze my relationships with other people from a certain point up until now. And you said that this was a perpendicular reality. What is the definition of a perpendicular reality? Answer. The perpendicular reality primarily, though not exclusively, refers to one's life path and how one's life path fits together in the cycle or in a wheel when connected with those of similar life paths, and oddly enough relates very closely to the previous question involving synchronicity. If you can picture an inland wheel formed by a circle within a circle and adjoining partitions in perfect balance, that would be the best representation of a perpendicular reality, for it does not completely involve one's individual experience, but rather a group of individual experiences for the progression of a greater purpose, if you understand what we mean. This is what we mean when we say perpendicular reality. Picture again a circle within a circle adjoining by equal space partitions in a perfect cycle. That is a perpendicular reality. Question, Terry. You had us draw the symbol and put several spokes or partitions between the two circles. Answer, correct. Is 7 the optimal number? 7 is always the optimal number. There are 7 levels of density. This reflects through all phases of reality. Question, Terry. The people that I interacted with during this time, they also had gone on to do other things that they were supposed to be doing because of their interactions with me in this perpendicular reality that we all existed in. That's correct. You also said that each of us in this group came from different perpendicular reality. That is correct. Question, Terry. Is it at this point where we merge our different perpendicular realities in order to learn from each other's experiences? That could be described as correct. Question, Laura. That's an interesting idea of like soul contracts and karma. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that down in the comment section below. Question, Laura. It is said that at the time that the inner circle was the connection with this reality and that the outer circle and connecting segments were where the perpendicular reality is joined with the wave. It is implied in the statement that the forming of this conduit through these perpendicular realities is instrumental in bringing forth this wave, bringing forth this change, this dimensional shift or density shift. And is that something that is being done in other places? We wish to congratulate you for asking 6 questions in one. Terry, one more question and you would have perfected a perpendicular question. Mirth. Question, Laura, are we connected in some way with the wave, individually and as a group? Well, of course, everything is connected to the wave. Question, Laura, are we, by connecting into this wheel, so to speak, activating the wave in some way? And so if you guys don't know what the wave is, that's the wave that's coming in that's going to bump us up into 4th density, hopefully positive. Depends on the truthers. If the truthers can wake up, if the truthers out there can get their heads out of their ass and stop selling their soul to all this junk conspiracy, then maybe we'll go positive. We're counting on you guys to stop selling your souls. I'm talking to the truthers. Please stop selling your souls, truther. Answer, we are not clear about your interesting interpretation there, but it is true that you have an interactive relationship with the wave. However, as stated before, you are an interactive relationship with the wave in a sense, and that the wave is part of your reality, always has been and always will be. And of course, it does not involve your progress through the grand cycle. And the perpendicular reality, again, is, of course, an advancement from the core outward, which is yet another reflection of all reality and all that exists. Now we wish to return to the visual representation as mentioned previously. If you notice, the core circular connects with all 7 sections to the other circle. Now picture the outer circle as being an ever-expanding circle, and each one of the 7 segments as being an ever-expanding line. Of course, now this will expand outward in a circular or cyclical pattern. Please picture visually an expanding outer circle and a non-expanding inner circle. Contemplate that, and then please give us your feelings as to what that represents. Question, Laura, does it represent an expansion of our knowledge and consciousness? Answer, that's part of it. Question, Laura, does it represent also expanding influences of what and who we are on that which is around us? Answer, that is correct. Laura, does it also represent more? Answer, oops. We detect a slippage of your visual representation. Contemplate, if you will, the ever-expanding outer circle and the non-expanding inner circle, and of course, the 7 partitions also moving outward. What type of shape does that form in your mind's eye? A wheel. Is that all? A pie? Keep going. Answer, Laura, an eye. Now we're starting to turn it into a sphere. Why would you want to turn it into a sphere? How can it be turned into a sphere? How can it not? It is going in all directions, not just flat. Is a straight line or, oh, you're not talking about a circle? We are talking about a circle. What becomes of a circle if you expand outward and forever? It disappears. It disappears. How can it disappear? Where does it disappear to? We ask you that, Jan. Jan? Jan, visually, as the outer circle expands, the inner circle becomes smaller and smaller until it disappears. As you continue to expand out with the outer circle, the inner circle disappears. But where does it disappear to? A black hole? A black hole. Well, that's a possibility, but we really don't want you to concentrate so heavily on the smaller circle. Now, did we? It's the outer circle. Question, Terry. The outer circle is used to encompass more and more. And what shape does it begin to take on? I want you to look at this outer circle expanding outward. Jan, are we to assume that the 7 spokes remain the same size in relationship to the circle? Well, answer that question for yourself. Okay, we were looking at it as a plane representation, as a flat surface. Well, what happens to a flat surface if you expand it outward forever? Well, we don't know. It just keeps going. It keeps going. Yeah, bigger and flatter. It does. What happens to a line if you extend it forever and ever? It keeps going. It does. Where does it go? Forever. Back to itself. We don't know that. Oh, someone said back to itself. That's what I was thinking. It ends up connecting back with itself, as in the one. Like a snake taking hold of its tail. And why don't we know that? Because we don't. It is conjecture that space is curved. Because we don't know. Why don't we know? Because we haven't been there. Had Columbus been to the outsides of Italy and Spain? Okay, are we going to assume that if it keeps expanding, it will eventually come back to itself? No, wait. We asked a question. Well, of course, Columbus had an idea that there was something, but he hadn't been there. No, but he went and checked it out. Did he just have an idea? Well, pretty much, I guess. That's not the way we remember it. The way we remember it is that he had instinct and imagination. And when he married his instinct with imagination, it became reality. And when it became reality, he had created a reality which he was fully confident would be manifest in the physical third density reality. It wasn't that he was confident. He knew it to be so. He didn't stop himself by adding prejudice to the equation, which is what you are doing. When you say, well, we don't know what happens because we've never been there. Think logically, please. We have told you so many times that everything is a grand cycle. It's a grand cycle. We have told you about circles within circles. We have told you about cycles. We have told you about shortwave cycles and longwave cycles. Now, after all of this information that you've asked of us, which we have been more than happily given to you, you would expect that a straight line would just go on forever and ever and ever as a straight line? How could it possibly do that? What happens if you take on your third density Earth and you draw a straight line to the east and the west or to the north and the south? It all comes back to itself. Right. Okay, so we're living in a big globe, are we? Well, that is what it sounds like, a big circle. Oh, my. You need more studying and learning, my dear. Need more study. Even your Albert Einstein had a theory about what happened. Yes, but that was just a theory. Oh, well, I guess then it must have been dropped. We'll never know. It's just a theory. Well, we'll just forget about it. Terry, I'm still expanding the circle. Me too. Very good. That was the idea. It keeps going and going. Well, mine does too, but it hasn't come back and met anything. So what's the point? Does there need to be a point? Of course. Who says? We are trying to help you learn. When do you expect to shut down this process? Never. Gee, I hope never. Then there's never is a point. Does that make sense? I mean, that's all the basis of spiritual study, guys, is that you always come back to yourself. It's always back to yourself. The answers are in here, not out there. It's always in here. And that's that kundalini, right? The snake eating itself. That's the kundalini. And then the snake rises up and then it comes back to itself. So after all that expansion of expanding out in consciousness, you're not just going off to the great beyond, you're coming back to yourself. That's my interpretation of what they're trying to say. You're never lost. And when they're saying, what's the point? He goes, does there need to be a point? Does there need to be a point? Or is that third density thinking that there has to be a point? All right. Okay, point taken. There is no point. Well, if you expand the circle outward and continue expanding it in all direction, it pulls the 7 spokes with it, which encompass more and more space in the cross section, and then turn that cycle, you have a sphere. Precisely. But Laura says that means we are living in a big globe, and maybe we are. Well, it wouldn't be a big globe, so to speak. It would be only a big globe within the circle. If the circle continues to expand, it would just continue to go outward and outward, and the globe would become bigger and bigger and bigger. You're making me nervous. But it goes outward forever because there is no end to going out. There isn't? Nope. Well, then maybe there's no beginning. Remember, beginning, middle, and end, that's the rule of Prakriti, of nature. That's not the rule of the soul. The soul is eternal. There is no beginning, middle, or an end. It just is. Well, there wouldn't be a beginning, just a big open void, an infinite void. And then there's no end and no beginning. Then what do you have? No point. The here and now. The here and now, which is also the future and the past. Everything was, is, and will be all at once. This is why only a very few of your third density persons have been able to understand space travel, because even through traveling into space, into your third density, is every bit as third density is lying on your bed at night in your comfortable home. The time reference is taken away, something that you hold very close to your bosom as if it were your mother, and it's the biggest illusion you have. We have repeatedly told you over and over that there is no time, and yet, of course, you have been so brainwashed into this concept that you cannot get rid of it no matter what you do. Now, can you? Imagine going out to space. You'd be lost when comforted with reality that is everything is completely all at once. Why not? Picture yourself floating around in space. I don't want to. There is also no space. Does the sphere keep expanding as the circle expands and you turn the circle 180, you get a sphere, and the sphere continues to expand, and you take a point on the outer edge of the sphere. In order to take the sphere about itself, you get a donut, an ever expanding inner tube with a black hole in the middle. Why does it have to be a black hole? It's a spiral. If you take that and twist it, you have an even larger inner tube. It just continues to expand and encompass more space. And now when you merge densities or transverse densities, what you have is the merging of physical reality and the ethereal reality, which involves thought form versus physicality. When you can merge those perfectly, what you realize then is that the reason there is no beginning and no end is merely because there is no need for you to contemplate a beginning or an end after you have completed your development. When you are in union with the one at 7th density, that is when you have accomplished this, and then there is no longer any need for differences between physical and ethereal forms. Question, Laura, on the subject of time, as we discussed the other day, we talked about the fact that at the constant of light, there is no time, there is no matter, there is no gravity, but that any unit small to the downward side of the constant light, suddenly there is gravity and suddenly there is matter. And we asked what it is that congeals this matter out of the energy of light, so to speak. And I believe that the answer we received was that it was consciousness from the 7th level. From our perspective, would it be possible to achieve this constant and move through to the other side of it, or at least stay fixed with it without dematerializing? Is the speed of light interconnected with the state of no time and no gravity? No, in an absolute sense, in a third density sense. Okay, and we have to be in our bodies. Like, we can't escape our bodies. Like, this is the whole point. Like, anybody who tells you that they're in the 5th dimension, that's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. We're all here in third density. No one is better than anybody else. No one is more enlightened than anybody else. It's just a constant trying to understand where we're headed and who we really are. All right? Answer, no. Okay, question, Laura. So if you are in 4th density, for example, does everything move at the speed of light, and that is why there is no time and no gravity? Answer, no, that is an incorrect concept. There is no speed of light. Light is everywhere. Precisely, there is no speed of light in the 4th density because there's no need for any speed. Speed itself, it's a 3rd density concept. You remember, all there is lessons. That's it. There's nothing else. It's all from your perception, for all consciousness. That's all there ever is. So I'm saying when people act like they are so much more enlightened than you, that's bullshit. That's narcissism. That's ego, because every single person is learning lessons. Your karma, if you're still breathing on this planet, you still have karma. Question, Laura. I'm still trying to get a handle on what it is. What is the source of this gravity, the state of time, because they seem to be so intimately connected. Answer, let us ask you a question. Do you remember going to school? Laura, yes. Answer, what did you do in the 3rd grade? Laura, lots of things. I learned cursive writing. I learned to multiply and divide. Do you remember what you did in the 1st grade? Yes. Please name one. I learned to count in several ways, to add and subtract. I learned to read and write. Did you learn multiply and divide in 1st grade? No. Okay, when you were in the process of learning to multiply and divide, did you drop your pen or pencil and steadfastly return your mind to 1st grade and try to figure out why you had to learn the alphabet? No. Why not? Laura, because I already knew it. You already knew it. In other words, you did not need to learn the alphabet because you already knew it, correct? Yes. Are you going to need to learn about the speed of light when there is no longer a speed of light? Well, that is what I'm trying to do. Once you learn it, maybe you are not subject to its lessons anymore. I mean, you get concepts presented, you absorb them, practice them, you become a part of you, and then you go to the next thing. Yes, but you are asking about the speed of light as relates to 4th density and above density levels, and we are telling you that there is no speed of light there because there's no need for that, because once you reach 4th density level, you have learned the lessons of 3rd density level. Question, Laura. Well, if a person on 3rd density gets into some kind of vehicle and achieves light speed, does that automatically translate them into 4th density? Could you please point out one of these vehicles? Well, we don't have any yet. Do you expect to have any before you go to 4th density? No. And the lesson is learned. Yes, sort of. If you trust in what you are saying, which is in response to what you are asking, then the lesson is learned. Now contemplate, because all there is lessons. When you talk about time being illusion, time being something we hold dear to us like a mother, and that sort of thing, and I would be perfectly happy to let go of time. You do. Let go. Well, it's one thing to want to do it in your mind, and another thing altogether to do it in your system, your internal operating system. Your internal operating system? Question, is that DOS or WARM? Could you please explain what an internal operating system is? I guess it's a subconscious mind. Is it? Maybe? My. Question, Terry. You can tell that when Laura started doing this, she had like no yoga training whatsoever. Because this stuff makes sense to me. Like, this makes sense to me because I spent 19 years studying the relationship between Prakriti and Purusha, the Shiva, the Shakti, which is what they're saying. And karma and the different placements of karma and dharma. And that's literally what they're telling her. But you can tell she's got zero training and all this stuff. And it's so funny. I've told you guys, if you Google in yoga, there's like nothing. They've never broached that subject with the Cassiopians, which is crazy to me. That's absolutely bonkers to me that they've never, because everything the Cassiopians say are literally sound very similar to the Vedic text. Question, Terry. The subconscious mind has no idea of time. Time is an artificial constraint. For example, a person can have a belief about prosperity in their conscious mind and talk about it and say affirmations and all kinds of positive things for themselves, and yet for some reason that individual continually lives on the edge of poverty because something keeps happening that they keep screwing up to keep themselves at the level of poverty. And when you start digging around in their subconscious mind, you find out that somewhere there is a belief of poverty, or there is a past life connection when they felt they needed or deserved to be poor. So their internal operating system takes precedence over their conscious beliefs and thoughts. This is what I'm talking about here. Yes, but what is your point? The point is that you may say that you would like to get rid of time, and you may understand it conceptually, but something internal keeps you tied to it. How do you get rid of that internal connection? Something internal keeps you tied to it? Like circadian rhythms, it's physical. We feel you are missing the point. Well, maybe I am. You see, we speak to all of you when we say this. It's now time for you as individuals to try to move away as much as possible, not to force yourselves, of course, but to try and move away at your own pace as much as possible from the constraints of third density. You have all learned lessons to the level where you are more than ready to begin to prepare for fourth density. The third density involves a level of physicality and restrictions and restraint and all things that go along with those that you no longer need. So therefore, even though we understand that at times it may feel comfortable to cling to things, there is a time for you, and there's that word again. It is a time for you to consider moving ahead and get ready for fourth density and not be concerned with such things as time or how to free yourself from the illusion of time. That really is not important. It's like the third grade student devolving into mathematics and stopping everything to go back and contemplate the ABCs and why it isn't CBA or BAC. There's really no point. It is what it is. They are what they are. That is what I want to know. What is it? Why do you need to know this? Because I am curious. What is time? We have already told you that it is not existent. Artificial creation of illusion for the point of learning at the level where you are or were, and once you have left that level, you no longer need it. Maybe one of the lessons is to learn not to worry about time. Once you learn that time is not real, tell that to your boss. If something is not real, is there any concern in worrying about what that is? Not for me. I think they're thinking more about like time, like, okay, right now it's 10 a.m., it's going to be 11 a.m., and I have lunch meeting at 1 p.m. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about time as in the aging process, as in, childhood, adulthood, elder age, letting go of the concept of this defining a person. That's what I feel like. Like the daily time constraints, the circadian rhythms, as she talks about, we have to sleep. Like that's part of our karma here. We have to sleep. We need the circadian rhythms, but that's not the time that they're talking about. Yes, that is, lunchtime, dinner time, that's illusionary too. We should just be going off when we're hungry. But that, I think they're talking about the bigger picture of time. Imagine a conversation between two people, Billy and Jean. Billy says to Jean, there's no such thing as time. Jean says, oh, really? But I want to know what it is. And Billy says, but I just told you there's no such thing. Time does not exist. It's not real in any form, in any frame of reference, in any form of reality, of any form of density. It simply does not exist. And Jean says, oh, that's interesting. Now again, what is time? We also have to remember too the illusionary world. So again, this goes back to the yoga studies, the Vedic text. This body, this matter that we're in, this life we're in, it's an illusion. It's Maya. It's necessary. It's a necessary Shakti, a creation of illusion, like playing pretend. As Shakespeare said, all the men and women are actors, right? The whole world is a stage. All men and women are merely actors. Our souls are encompassing this world, this illusionary world, to learn a lesson. But this world we're in is not real. And again, that's a yoga term too. This attachment to Bryce, to my body, to who I am, is a false sense of illusion because I am not permanently and forever Bryce. I'm a soul. You're a soul experiencing friction of third density to learn lessons. It's like going to see a play. We know the play is imagination, it's an illusion. Even though we're watching it transpire, the actors are going to leave the stage eventually. We know that. We don't fear the curtain call. We don't fear the finale because we know that it's all just for fun anyway. I hope that makes sense. Laura, point taken. Terry, do you wear a watch? Laura, no. I have to because of my schedule, but you wear the watch because other people believe in time. Yes, and that is out of the courtesy for their beliefs, not your belief. That is precisely correct. While you're still in third density, it's still necessary for you to conform to a certain extent to the way of others who are more comfortable with the realm of this third density. But as we have stated previously, perhaps it is time for you to begin preparing for fourth density and not concern yourself anymore than is absolutely necessary with all the wheres and whys and what fors in third density reality. This truly is behind you now, and we have to know that because we can see from all levels 6 through 1 back again into the full cycle. Laura, going along with this statement, and this is going to have to be the last question, pertaining to fourth density, not too long ago, I asked a question about the purpose of this group, and the answer was that if we knew, or more specifically, I knew, I would become unglued. What was that? Was that meant literally? Oh, yes, certainly. Every single bone in your body is going to unglue itself from every other. You are going to turn into a puddle. Well, since you were saying that, is it time for us to begin preparing for fourth density? Maybe it's time to deal with that question. Well, perhaps you are trying to steer us now. This is amusing because, of course, you sought our help. Now, I guess you were going to put us into your place and vice versa. But actually, in a way, that is what is already happening because, again, we must remind that we are you in the future and you have already experienced all that you are experiencing. And of course, we are experiencing as it has always been experienced. But it is important to note that you have been making progress despite our occasional sightings. And we are very proud of the progress you have been making. Also, we want to remind you again not to worry about the extent of the progress or the direction it is taking. Just let it happen. All knowledge that is absolutely necessary for you to gain to sustain this progress will be gained at the appropriate point in time. Therefore, not to worry, as it will fall into place as we have told you. Now, we do not feel that you are ready as yet to know what your ultimate purpose is, nor is it necessary for you to know, and it certainly would not help in any way. So we ask again that you please not worry about that, because when the time comes for you to know, you will. Got to have some trust there. I want to ask one question. If there is no time, there is no past and no future, there are no past lives and no future lives, there's no such thing as reincarnation, then how can you be us? Yes, there is reincarnation. You're getting ahead of yourself there. We never said there was no reincarnation, but you said there is no time. It is our perception of it. It is all happening simultaneously. We're having all of these lifetimes at once. Is there a way that we can connect ourselves with all of our other selves? Picture it this way. We will access some of your memory banks and give you another reference, which, interestingly enough, fits very closely with the perpendicular reality wheel that we described earlier. You know what a slide projector looks like. To give you some feeling of what this expanded nature of reality really is, picture yourself watching a big slide presentation with a big slide wheel on the projector. At any given point along the way, you are watching one particular slide, but all the rest of the slides are present on the wheel, are they not? And of course, this fits in with the perpendicular reality, which fits in with the circles within circles and circles within and cycles within cycles, and also fits into the grand cycle, which also fits in with what we have told you before. All there is lessons, and that's all there is, and we ask that you enjoy them as you are watching the slide presentation. That makes sense to me. And again, I say when people get so obsessed with their past lives, that bothers me as a teacher. That means there's something in this particular life that you're trying to avoid, or you're trying to like place your ego. And people always talk about their past lives of being some great person. No one was ever like the chimney sweep. You know, like watch your ego with past lives. Don't worry about it. You're where you are now. You're living the karma you're living now. Deal with it in the now, because even the past lives themselves are somewhat illusionary. It's all a part of the grand play, the grand imagination of the consciousness. It's not a permanent thing. In that analogy, the light shines through the slide as it projects upon the screen. Is that our perception? And if you look back at the center of the projector, you can see the original essence of all creation itself, which is level 7, where you are in union with the One. Question, Terry. Can we ask one more quick question? NASA, I can't say that word, has announced that the space telescope Hubble has detected clusters of comets. In this, in effect, the beginning of the governments of the world preparing for the people what is to come? It certainly is a possibility. But again, as you are accessing a very touchy area, too much knowledge for you to gather in this particular area would not be beneficial. End of session. So that was a heavy one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If I can help clarify anything about nature and soul and Prakriti and Purusha and what they were speaking about, let me know. I can possibly create a separate episode where I give the yoga perspective, which might be easier to understand. Just let me know down in the comment section below. And again, join us over on the Esoteric Academy. We have so many courses on this. This is what I do for a living outside of YouTube. So please join us if you want. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye, everybody.